and this is a question because when I talk about diversity in Ireland, I get, but I've got a woman on my board, or I've got a woman on my team. For me, that's not an expression of diversity. It's the expression of you have sort of one issue and you think that's done. So today is going to be really a workshop. I'm going to try and work through a couple of different ideas to see what you think. If you think it's important for a company to have diversity at its start, and how that relates into culture. So the first question is why diversity? And what is diversity? So what do you feel diversity is? What does diversity mean to you? So I'm having an open floor, so does anybody want to state?
Well, this is it's really a challenging question. So to define a diversity in a company, especially if it is a small one, because I don't know what diversity for me is like. Usually, it's cultural diversity.
Yeah.
So this is probably a concept that should fit in a big company. In a way.
So, do you think, the question I always get is, if I'm a startup,
yes,
I don't care about diversity because the only thing I care about is making revenue. And I've got a team which are friends I met either in previous companies or been at school with or in university. We all know each other. We're all the same type of people, and our focus should be revenue generating. Do you think that's...
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
I think diversity is key to success.
Why?
Because by being diverse as a company, you are able to identify or let's say bring the risk down because you have more experiences and different experiences. So two companies doing the same product and one with a diverse set of people and one with a very equal set, probably they are more likely to fail because they have not gone through different experiences, different ways of seeing the same problem. Normally to come to conclusion or solutions to problems, you need people to come back with multiple solutions and then discuss why one is going to be better. If everyone was the same, potentially the solution is always going to be the same one and probably they're going to be failing in the same mistake again and again. That's my opinion.
I made an exhibition in another life, and it was a kind of the city of difference. And we had there a science tunnel, let's call it this way, and we present a piano and all the, how do you call that?
The key.
The key were the same notes. So you cannot compose any music with these. They are all the same.
The sound was the same.
The sound was the same for all of them. And of course you need the right diversity to produce something new. And the second example, there were many, but the second one that had come to my head is we had a pendulum, you know. And the pendulum, if it works, if it's a regular pendulum, you always can predict what will happen in the next moment. And if we had another pendulum, which was a kind of aleatory pendulum, so you never know where it will come and you are all the time surprised. And surprise, of course, is information. So if you know what's going to come, you don't have any information. So you need for information to have surprise. So it's a different way of looking at diversity.
I like the piano. I think I might steal that one.
That's Ireland, full of pianos and everything.
It would be, I know, everybody would be going, there'd be some people which are so tone deaf, they'd be going, no, this is fine. No, I think one of the issues has been in a lot of the events is that people won't show up. There's the people which have a very clear definition of that's fine. I'm all about money. And I think, like, I've got statistics around how it actually is beneficial to have diversity. And I think it's coming to your point is that when you are starting to scale your company, the problem is if you're, as you say, the one note in the company, you only reflect one of your customers. Instead of being, if you've got a diverse company, then you mirror your customer base. And this is becoming more and more of a problem when companies start to scale and start to have collaborations with multinationals, because multinationals expect now, when they are partnering with startups, that the startups will have a diversity amongst them and a culture which is very firm set. So the question I always has is when you're thinking about setting up a company and you're growing an organization, when do you start to think about this? When's the logical point? Is it something you keep in the back of your head, or is it something which you put into the overall culture? And when I say culture of a company, I mean the belief system and the vision you have for a company. So some of the questions which I really look at is, which you probably have answered some of them, which is really what are the challenges? What are the challenges you see in having diversity within a company as a startup? I'm a startup person, so I'll talk about startups, but I run organizations as well. And organizations need to be diverse just as equally as. So what do you think are the roadblocks preventing diversity?
Preventing.
Yeah. So what is stopping a lot of companies from being diverse?
You mean at the startup level?
At a startup level.
I would say as a startup level, it's easier for me to find people alike to work with, and it takes more effort and more resources to actually access people that will enrich the situation, just because I'm not very sure how to approach them. I can convince my friend of doing something on a spare weekend, and it's very complicated to go to someone that is very different to me and somehow motivate that person to come to my house over a weekend and start something. So that's what I think is the first blockage.
And what do you think, because you've actually led into a second question, which is how do we go about encouraging people or who are different cultural, different race, different identity, different class, different thought process? How do you encourage them to engage with your company, and how do you approach them? What do you think are the best ways of approaching people?
A good salary. A good salary.
I want to join your startup where you've got a good start.
There is also like an attitude that I think we need to pay attention, which is like how do we respect, or how do I respect you when you share with me a completely different opinion about something that I would never do in my life, or I could never take that decision in my company. But we are working together. If we do what you are suggesting, and I don't agree, how can we deal with that? Like when we are like in a brainstorming, or we are going to take a decision, and the one close to you says, no, I don't. Yeah, it's not like that. It's like this, no? Like I don't know if we need to work more in these kind of events, or like to have places like this one to really discuss about our attitude.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those issues is that some people always feel alienated from a conversation. So some people don't feel that they can be included in, say if I was running a startup which identified leaves on a tree, that some people wouldn't be feeling that they're inclusive. So one of the ways is, as a community, And who's here is in the startup community who work for innovation, or your startup, or
No, I'm accelerator.
accelerator?
Yeah.
So, as an accelerator and a startup culture or organizations, how do you make sure that you're getting your message out to a wider audience? What techniques should you go after? What things should we do to encourage that we get a wider mix which represents the population we're in? If we're in a population which is like where I'm from in Ireland, there's very little diversity in terms of race, there's very little diversity in terms of...
Sorry, this was my question.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of diversity are we talking about here?
Yeah, well that's, the point is, what, at the start, I was said at the start, what do you see diversity? What do you see as diversity?
I know, because I work for Orange, a big corporation, company, and for us diversity is women, men.
Just women and men.
Yes.
Well, my
The sexual
yes, the gender. Well,
Yes.
this is a misunderstanding, I think. My experience is also more in a multinational than in a startup. So for me, there's two things. First, that all the managers and directors will feel more comfortable to work with people similar to you in terms of decision making, and then the misunderstanding in terms of recruiting in diversity. Because if recruiting on diversity is men and women, is the gender or the culture, it depends on the diversity you are looking for. Because sometimes there are a question or a reason on cultural to find a diversity or a gender, but sometimes there's a totally different reason to find a diversity. Not it's always a question of culture or a question of gender. So in big corporations, in multinationals, I think the two big reasons to avoid or prevent
So
diversity are those two.
And I think it's more easier to have the diversity program for a big corporation than to have for a startup.
yeah, I think right.
But are we saying then that diversity means this?
No.
Gender,
Big.
no.
No.
Yeah, okay.
I
No,
don't think-
okay.
So-
Okay, so would be more like having different
Cultures,
different opinions inside a company, for instance, or
Yeah.
differences inside a company. Or
I'm glad you brought that up because to me, diversity. So I'll give you an example. So my daytime job, I work with investors in helping them form startups and putting people into startups, taking people from corporate and trying to get them into working with smaller companies and also forming boards. So one of the chairs of an Irish company which I work with, I found somebody and it says this person's going to be really good for you. And he said, why? And I says, they're going to be very challenging. She will challenge you. And he says, why would I want somebody who challenges me? I have Tom, Dick and Harry, who I've been working for the last 4 companies with. They never challenge me. We have our board meetings are finished within an hour and a half, and then we can go off and have dinner. So I think diversity also includes diversity of thought. But that one is something which is a very hard concept for people to grasp because
you need to be very mature to make this kind of decision as a manager, the boss.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult one for people to aspect because the problem is if you're working on a project, it's easier to work with people who you know, and also people which you know which will do their various parts within a project. So having somebody with a different view always is a way of looking at a different way of looking at a project, a different way of looking at a view. Sometimes there's going to be that tension, but that tension always leads to innovation. Sometimes it leads to other problems, but that's where you go through. Sometimes the problem is that because there's not diversity of thought, that you go down one path and you're not going. Anybody who was at the talk yesterday, which was looking at creativeness and the roadblock when you go straight. Sometimes you need somebody which is going to say, we'll do that. But it is very difficult. So one of the problems I have is, do you say to people when they're forming companies, right, you should have somebody different, or you should say this is something you need to think about when you grow larger? Because a lot of people in startups will say to me, that is a responsibility for a corporate to develop a diversity program. I'm too busy trying to make money. I don't care about this. It's not important. But the problem is, when companies grow, they don't grow at a kind of steady pace. Companies grow like this. So if you haven't considered how you're going to grow and what your company is, the culture around your company. So when I say culture, it's what you believe in. So if you look at Google, from day one, Google would say that they've always had a Google-ness, and people have that kind of natural characters that everybody believes the same things, and diversity is one of the things that they believe in. So the question I have is that I did a survey of Irish startup companies, and which had some venture capital investment, and 93% of those companies were male CEOs.
Well, it's all the corporate world is like that. Male CEOs.
Yeah.
Even more than 95%, I would say.
Yeah. So getting back to that, so people say, well, that's because there's not enough women. So I've went and looked at the research. So the research shows that technology companies, and I'm talking technology because that's my space, technology companies which are led by women achieve 35% higher returns on the investment than solely run by men, and 12% higher revenues. According to another study done by University of Michigan, when companies start to scale and go to an IPO, they get 30% better results from their IPO if they have a woman CEO. So having a diversity in teams when they're starting to scale actually is economically more valuable, but it's trying to look at how you get that balance right, and it's about a balance of getting a balance of people and getting a balance of point of view.
Yeah, it's difficult to compare, because you just compare the gender differences, or you also compare.
But
different.
These companies have diversity policies in place, so that's
In terms of culture
So-
and
so typical. And I looked at diversity policies. So a typical diversity policy is that our company believes in a mixture of individuals from a different race, gender, class, sexual orientation, age, geography, and physical abilities. Obviously, when you're working in a small company, that's impossible. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. But that should be a philosophy when you're starting to look to scale. Because, as I said before, there's that kind of logic around, if you're a consumer-facing company, then you need to start to look like your client base. Because that's the people which you're selling to, so therefore you need to be able to understand your client a little bit better. In a business sense, some people would argue against, I'm doing business to business selling, so I need to look like the company that I'm selling to.
But then how manage that? How you ask for the sexual orientation of a new incomer? Is that legal or?
depends on the country.
That is a good question, actually.
So
I think it is legal.
Okay, it's legal.
In Spain, yes.
You can ask,
Spain is
are
legal.
you
You can ask
homosexual?
whatever you
Or
want.
Yeah.
you can ask
In an interview, yes.
Really?
You can ask, yes.
But do you need to answer the question?
No, if you don't want.
No,
you
there's
don't need diversity, you don't want diversity to sell with the clients, to have it's a contradiction. You see.
yeah. No, what I'm saying, these are the opinions I've heard.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm trying to do.
So the clients will understand you if you have no diversity with them.
Yeah.
So make diversity, not to have diversity with the clients. Okay.
No, so the kind of arguments I get is that if I'm consumer facing, that's perfect. I understand this, we have to be diverse. But I'm selling, say I'm selling a component of this microphone into another component company. Do I need to be diverse? Because they're going to be not diverse, so we're not diverse, so I don't need to show that diversity. So that's the argument I would get. So, and I've got it from a company in Ireland that they go, well, we live in a small rural town, we don't need to be diverse because our companies we're selling to are not diverse. So it's the kind of working out how you can justify that kind of level of diversity. And one of the other issues, and I was mentioned this at the start, is it's very difficult to get, if you say the word diversity, and if I say if I was announcing I was going to have a diversity talk in Ireland, who would turn up? What do you expect the audience to be? I've been at one, so I know.
In Ireland.
In Ireland, yeah, say in Ireland, but the last diversity talk I went to, there was 3 men at it. So the problem I have, and this is kind of ruined my point here, but when we're actually there's more men, is it's difficult to. I find it difficult to get men to talk about diversity because men are scared to talk about diversity. Obviously, you're not, especially in the companies I work with. So I'm trying to get, one of the things I'm trying to do is get more people to be champions within companies, more people to say this is a beneficial thing. But the problem is you have to justify it, and that's why I go and get statistics and say, well, actually, it benefits your company, instead of saying it's nice to be everybody together. We're in business, so we have to look at the beneficial point of view. But to have that kind of conversation, what do you think is the best way to engage people to talk about these issues, talk about culture, talk about diversity?
I think the first thing you need to do when you speak about diversity is to separate it from the fact that it's not about being men or women. I think most of the diversity is linked very closely to how you see more women in the company, that you were saying before. But it's proven that it's not about that, it's about that.
Everything.
Even faith, sexual orientation, is stuff that like enriches the whole experience, and you can have only men and still be only diverse. I think that would get people to understand that maybe you're going to say something interesting afterwards. And otherwise people just have a very clear position or understanding up front of what they think about having more women in the company.
Anybody else?
I'm guessing. I'm not sure about what I'm going to say.
Right.
Like, I don't know if not talking about diversity and making things to approach people, that at the end I don't care what is your sexual orientation, or if you are a man or a woman, or if you are big or small, or you know, like not putting that in a point of discussion, but making things to approach people, like to play, instead of talking about which are the keys of the piano, let's put all the keys together and let's play, and let's see if there is a good melody there, or you know, let's play a song.
But I think the gender one is the easiest one actually. So maybe that's because we are talking about, because it's quite really different, the way of management by the woman and different way of managing the company by the man. And there is is going after, I mean, the difference of salary, which still exists, and this is something which is like touchable, something that we can see the difference. I mean, I think it's very difficult to try to differentiate the way of working of people from different religions, for example, because then you need to discuss about the values, which is like more basic discussion. I don't know if I'm clear, but
No.
I think the gender one is the easiest one.
Yeah.
And this may be that because people are thinking right at once about it.
Okay, well, sorry, you're about to say something.
No. The idea is that I would have a mix the gender issue, because the gender issue is a gender issue for me. I mean, I think this is quite well established.
Yeah.
And there is a European policy on that as well. They ask everywhere if you have a gender policy, even in the research institutes they ask you if you have a gender policy, so this is quite well established. But in terms of the diversity, you have different, in a way, everybody is diverse.
Yeah.
Everybody is different. You can say that. So to try to establish, because diversity can be referred on cultural. That it was my first thought. But it can be also related to what's the learning experience, what is the background in terms of professional background, and then this maybe this transversality is this is my difficulty to.
But I think that you need to have in a startup when you don't have a place for 100 people, you have a place for 8, 10 sometimes.
Yes.
You cannot just diversify people because you need to diversify. I mean, you need to have a profile.
But this is
select people because of the profile, not because the culture. Then when you begin.
But when you make a startup, you need the guy that knows about business, the technological guy, the financer guy, and usually when you set a startup, you try to have that with you. Otherwise, you know that. But this is not, maybe it's not this.
I think something else to approach diversity in large corporations is to actually make teams or groups of people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like put them in situations where they actually understand that they are not able to give a solution to a problem because it's just like very far away. And then
So one of the things which, because I'm actually going to be holding an event as part of a big festival of startups, because people don't talk about this. So one of the things I was considering doing is having round tables and being very prescriptive, have people's name places in the round tables and giving them a different gender, giving them either a different race and a culture and a role call, and they have to play that person.
Yeah.
So it takes people out, as you said, it kind of takes people out of their comfort zone, so that people know that how to interact. And I don't know how that would react, whether people will just see it as nice little play acting and it's fine, or will people actually start to think, because I think you're 100%, you're right where you're thinking, because one of the things I'm trying to get away with is not so much in Europe, we're quite lucky, but if you go to Silicon Valley, I can't tell the difference between a lot of companies apart from their different t-shirts with their chinos. Because that's all you see. You see groups of 4, 5, 6 men wearing chinos and maybe a hoodie top, and they all look the same. And I can never remember their names of their companies because. And I think diversity is not necessarily a gender issue. I think very much, maybe because I was an academic before, I go into the thought. I think I prefer to people who are going to ask me questions. I prefer to people which are different from me, because I can be quite boring. I want to work with somebody who's different and fun and interesting. I don't want to work with somebody who's...
But how do you define the difference? Because everyone is different actually. Yeah. So, I mean, you need to find the criteria when you talk about it.
Exactly. And that's...
threshold. It is something...
Can I go through...
significantly different, diverse.
I mean, what you think, what you say, what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but what I kept from as a message from you is that you need to different people, like interesting people around you to but this is not the diversity issue.
Yeah, it kind of is. It is, and I mean the different people is a mix of women, men, gay, straight, but it's not necessarily, it's trying not to have the one note, and I love that, so I'm totally stealing that. It's trying not to have that one note in your company. It's trying not to hire people like yourself, and I hire people, and it's very, very hard because it's, you see somebody and you go, you're really interesting. And I've hired people in the
Because
past.
you see yourself in the mirror sometimes. Yeah.
Well, no, I've hired people. I've hired somebody. The worst hire I ever had was the person was interesting. Shocking. I spent the whole time talking about the different experience. So I didn't do the interview where I was talking about, can you actually do this job? It was that I hired somebody who was interesting. But I think what I'm trying to do is look at how you set a culture within your company, how you set a culture where you are encouraging a diversity. Did you have a belief system in that? It's very hard, as I said, I would put my hand up and say it's very hard at the very start of the company. But it's something where you need to have that kind of conversation and start to talk about how, if my company strikes it lucky and I get 100 million investment tomorrow and I have to scale that company to have 100 staff, if you don't have a belief system of what you want that culture, what type of people you want to work for, what the people believe in, then you will find it very hard. So a lot of the cases is a lot of companies fail because their product's bad or something else, but they also fall because the culture of the company hasn't been set. And that's why I put baking down, but because you make the cake and then you stick it in the oven and you let it incubate. So you're looking at what are the ways that you can look at it? What are the ways when you're recruiting people? How do you recruit diversity? How would you recruit diversity? Like, you both work in large companies.
First, you have to know what I need diversity for.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then you can define which kind of
Okay.
diversity you need. If you need diversity for creative mind in terms of design,
Yeah.
maybe you don't need interesting people in terms of life experience. You need people you have to answer, what do I need diversity for? And depending on your objective, you select one kind of diversity or other.
In your teams at the moment, do you feel that you need diversity, or do you feel...
I definitely need diversity.
Yeah. So in recruiting, when you recruit diversity, how do you recruit diversity? What techniques do you think can be used to recruit diversity? Methods. Any suggestions? Any thoughts?
When you make a profile,
What?
I do agree with you that you need some person for, you have a job description.
I mean,
So then you try to
It's
find.
obvious you cannot go very personal on that.
Yeah.
If you go personal, you try to see
Oh,
how
yeah.
close.
isn't the objective to be complementary? It's a final, so you need to find different people
Yeah.
to make it work together.
So what happens is that, say you advertise the position in a certain place.
If you advertise, sorry?
If you're going to advertise a position, you
Yeah.
advertise it in one place.
Okay.
You're going to get whoever reads that. If it's LinkedIn, it's going to be targeted at one person. So what other methods? Because I think that's the problem, is that people advertise something in one place and they don't reach out to a sort of a wider audience. So that's the kind of benefit of modern technology. You've got Twitter, you've got Snapchat, that you can sort of look at how you can develop that kind of aspects. But it's something which, what I'm trying to do is not this kind of, well, here you go, here's the guide to diversity. But it's having, when you're looking at scaling your company, it's well, maybe I should look at reaching out to this place and this place, because then people can get access to the information, rather than, sure, I've always advertised in Telecoms Weekly and we've got all our staff through that advertising. It's looking how you outreach. Also is how you get other people involved, that everybody believes that this is beneficial. So if you have people from one section, will you say, well, actually, I would like more people like you, or I would like more people like you, and how you engage them? And rather than it's something that, because a lot of the cases in companies like yourselves, people say, well, that's HR do that. And that's...
But you brief them.
No, yes, I don't agree exactly. You brief
You
them.
brief them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you brief them.
Yeah. They do it, but you need to.
But how, the question I have is, how do you, as a campaign, how do you outreach to people? How do you outreach to people to make things more diverse? What? I don't have the answer, so this is why.
No.
So it's the...
Well, for me, the profile is the job description is very important. Because then there is, I agree with you that this diversity thing must be maybe a complement of your team as well.
Yeah.
Because maybe you hire somebody that is that diverse, that can understand this person and can destroy your team. So in a way, so this is the other thing.
Yeah.
The previous spin-off.
I think all of us have been in teams which somebody's been hired and has ruined the team. But I don't...
I can share the experience of a friend. She was the owner of one of the most successful fashion industries in the world, and we were talking about recruiting once. And she told me that every time that she wanted to hire someone, she used to go to the street and talk with people, just like that, and ask, what do you do for holidays?
Right.
And with that question, she could feel what person she had in front of her, and I think it's lovely. I think it's a very good way to start feeling, the person you have in front of you.
But
This
for
example is great, but I think it's not exact. It shows exactly the opposite of diversity, because I think that this way, and I completely agree. You find the people like you, the people that you like, the way they live. So it's not different, it's the same. It's something that's close to you.
No, because she was concerned about that. She was not taking people that for during holidays was doing something she loved. It was the way to know the person instead of having a CV in front of you, which is something what we do normally. Like
so
send
all
a
of
CV.
Something I do, like for example, I hire a lot of developers, and we obviously get to a question what you do when you're not working, just to see how much of that person that developer is. I've never hired someone that says something that I like. They say completely random stuff. I just get very bored. I'm just thinking, why did I ask this person again?
when they start talking about the 40th.
So you need to understand the passion of what they like without thinking that's what I like too. You know, like. So I only hire people that I completely disagree with whatever they do. And stuff like that, because I know they're gonna bring something new to
I would 100% agree with you, because one of my favourite questions to ask in an interview is, what do you do for fun? Because I do a lot of technical roles. So I'm like you're like going, I'm sure that sounds great, but I have no idea what you're talking about. But at that one's when you start to see the passion, the fire. And that could be anything. It could be I collect train signs from around Europe. I don't care, as long as you have something outside which is you're passionate about. But moving on to sort of culture, does anybody who works for somebody else, and I will put it, first of all, do you know what the culture of your company is?
What?
Do you know what the culture of your company is?
I love the company. I wanted to say one anecdote, but I think it's funny. I'm sorry. Maybe it's talking about the diversity and gender diversity in Orange. I work for Orange, a big company, 1,200 people in France. 120,000 people in France, sorry, and 170 in the world. So in France, like kind of a big part of the company. And we had the selection of the new COMEX member like 1.5 years ago, and it is my boss today. Her name is Marina, and she had a great experience, a great path, professional path. And she was selected 1.5 years ago. And our president, Stefan Richard, who was announcing her nomination, 9,000 people in the division, so it's quite a big division, innovation, marketing and technology. And when he was announcing it, he said, so I decided to give her this position. Marina, she's a woman. And it was like so awful, and it was, in life, for all the employees of the company, this kind of discussion. So I think that the diversity, first of all, it must be natural.
Yeah.
It cannot be something which is forced because it is politically correct, because you have to do it.
Okay. I'll go into culture in a second, so I'll take up that point.
Yeah.
So, what do you think men can do for the gender diversity? Do you think? Because some people would say, if men say, I'm going to promote and mentor women, that it's been patronising. Or do you think that it's a role with certain men within organisations to specifically target women to mentor so that they reach higher positions in companies? Do you think it's men's fault?
No, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's fault. I mean, it's society's fault.
Yeah.
It's not a man's fault. It's society's fault. I mean, it's a cultural, But I think it's important to work on it together and not to be what.
Yeah. But so, moving on to culture. Some of us work for ourselves, but do you know what the culture of your? If somebody said to you, "What's the culture of your company?" What would you say?
What's the culture for my company?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understand.
So,
Is that values?
values and belief system.
Yeah, I mean, on the paper it's great. I mean, values, I can say, of course, we do all this great stuff, responsibility, diversity, etc. But one thing like I just mentioned shows that it's bullshit.
But okay, in a term.
So you can believe it as someone who works for the company, but it must be proven that this is natural.
Okay, if somebody asks you, to me, culture is, if somebody asks me what it's like to work in a company, I can say, I like working in this company because of this, this, and this. And this is the core essence. If you were to make a perfume or cologne of a company, this is the essence of a company. So, do you feel that companies don't necessarily make that clear when you're joining companies? Have you been in a company which you knew exactly that everybody knew exactly what the company believed in, knew what the vision was, and it wasn't bullshit? Because I know all of us see the mission statement where there's 5 things and you go, that's terribly nice, but we all know that that's for the AGM.
I mean, the ideal one, yes, of course.
Yep.
You should believe in the values of the company. Yeah.
And that's kind of, oh sorry, you were about to say.
I agree with you that the culture of the company is the reason why people actually annoy them. I actually was working for a company that was quite small and became very big. I remember how useless and endless meetings we had. Having to write one sentence of this company is so powerful. I just couldn't believe it because by doing that we're just affecting the fact that we no longer wanted to go to work because we were working in personal company in these meetings and defining stuff that wasn't really why I joined. I think, as you said, everybody needs to understand why you work for that company. Even in the diverse work, probably those values are the same across teams and across the company. That's probably what it is, but I'm not sure I could define it because there's a lot of feelings
Yeah.
into cultures.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I cannot put in words, and I think that's the problem of what we have.
Yeah.
People were trying to put feelings into
Right.
a sentence, and we tried to be philosophical, and we were just technical people, so we didn't even write properly.
And I think this is again another thing which people should talk about. It's because more and more people will want to come to work with a company which has a feeliness about it. And I would take that word because sometimes it's very hard to actually put it into where we have to go. But thank you very much.
So when there's a